right, I'm going to introduce the rest of our speakers for this panel. Timothy Famulare is the community development director at the town of Provincetown. He also has a background as an environmental planner and conservation agent, and he's been working a lot on advancing resilience for Provincetown. Nina Coleman who's next? Catherine Ricks, here we go, is the Coastal Resilience Director for the town of Chatham. Also has extensive experience as a project manager and project engineer, so we'll get a really great perspective there. Worked in Massachusetts, Florida, and Louisiana along the coast?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now we will go to Nina Coleman, the Director of Natural Resources and the Sandy Neck Park Manager for the town of Barnstable. She's been working as the Sandy Neck Park Manager since 2003, and she spends her time balancing the ecological needs of this dynamic and sensitive coastal system with the demands of human recreational activities. So we'll hear some cool stuff from the Sandy Neck Project, I'm sure. And as you'll notice, I am not Steve McKenna on the slide. Like I mentioned, he's really upset he can't be here, but he's ill. So I'm going to be facilitating this panel, which is focused on the overall process of advancing resilience at the local level. So that includes from prioritization and planning to permitting, funding, outreach, and implementation. So I'm going to start off with the question of thinking about a current or recent project. What's a key resilience challenge your municipality is facing, and what specific actions have you taken to address it? To any of these three panelists first.
I guess I can take that one. So for the town of Chatham, we have a lot of working waterfront. And in order to keep it working waterfront, we can't just go and do a project that looks out at the sea level rise in 50 to 70 years. We have to keep the elevation of our bulkheads and our landings to where it's relative to the water level now. But we also don't want to do a multi-million-dollar project now and have to redo it in 20 years when the sea level rises. So we are currently working on 2 projects, and with the engineers, we're working on having a design where in 20 years, like the project can be phased to where we can increase the elevation of the parking, the elevation of the bulkhead. And they're both in design right now, the one at Riders Cove Landing and at Barnhill Landing. So with that, we're working with the design engineers, but also when it comes to public engagement, we have multiple waterfront committees in our town. And in the design process, we are bringing the designs to those committees and having the input from those committees during the design process so that we have that public engagement, and those are open to public coming and not just the committee members. So that's how we're trying to work on it.
I would say Provincetown, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, we are basically about a little over 3 square miles. We have about 400 coastal properties. They're on very small lots, usually about a quarter, maybe a half an acre. And Commercial Street is a historic district. Among Cape Cod towns, there are approximately 900 or so that are within special flood hazard areas mapped by FEMA. And of that 900, over 500 of them are in Provincetown. So Commercial Street, which is incredibly low-lying and very vulnerable, is also very key to the town's character with respect to the historic district and is a big tourism draw. It's also very densely developed. Our town, again, is only about 3.5 square miles, so the opportunity for horizontal retreat is not really there. Our only retreat is up. So our big challenge is how do we address the issues of sea level rise with respect to vertical elevation, and how do we get those property owners to elevate their properties. We recently completed a townwide coastal resilience plan last June with a great consulting team. Scape Landscape Architecture was the lead. In Woods Hole Group and EDR Engineering were also part of that team. And something that they proposed was that we develop a sort of a for the next 50 to 70 years, what would be the average bulkhead size that we should have, that we should be encouraging private property owners to build to if they are building a new bulkhead or repairing an existing one. Probably about 75% of the shoreline is currently armored. And at town meeting in April, we passed a zoning bylaw that was recommended by the Coastal Resilience Plan that would require, among other things, the elevation of those private bulkheads. So that's really the challenge that we are dealing with, is how can we help preserve a shoreline that is mostly privately owned.
And in the town of Barnstable, our main access to Cape Cod Bay is the Sandy Neck Beach property, and that's really what I'm here today to talk about, is our project that we're actively involved with right now, which is a retreat project. I look forward to many of you coming and seeing our project.
I just put those photos up too if you want to reference
thank you.
them.
Yeah, hot off the press photos. So we're actively trying to preserve access for our public on the north side of our town. Sandy Neck Beach takes the whole north side of our town. It was a 10-year drama to get to where we're at right now. Kind of here today to hopefully be available for folks that want to talk about their projects, all the pitfalls and difficulties of achieving retreat. Sandy Neck is extremely complex, with it being an ACEC, an endangered species habitat. So regulatorily, this was a very difficult project. But I think even more so, it was difficult to get buy-in from the community. And so it was a 10-year project to get buy-in, permits, and then we just paved yesterday. So I'm really excited to share that.
Awesome. I heard a lot of techniques that you guys are trying to use to move resilience forward, bylaws, vertical elevation, relocating, getting buy-in, and now I'm wondering maybe if somebody could speak to what's one thing that's helping move your project forward, like thinking about the process that you guys are all using.
Well, first I want to say the zoning bylaw that we recently passed, Provincetown worked with the Cape Cod Commission, the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, on the model zoning bylaws, and our bylaw was based off of that, so I want to thank that team for that work. But another thing that is helping us drive our projects forward is a realization in the community that that the threat is real, and town meeting has been very generous with respect to funding these projects to move them forward. We received $300,000 to advance the Coastal Resilience Plan, and since that time we've received $750,000 in capital planning funds to move forward on the next stage of feasibility studies and design for the sort of the town infrastructure projects that we're focused on in that plan. And I think a large part of that was that we did, during our Coastal Resilience Plan, we had an incredible community engagement process. We engaged about 500 people, which in a town of 3,100 is pretty significant. Obviously, a lot of those might be seasonal residents, but we really did a great job in getting the word out, and we had great participation in that process. And of course, we have had a number of pretty catastrophic storms in the past decade that have really brought to mind the importance of this work. So I really think sort of having that community buy-in and that support at town meeting has been crucial.
I don't really have much for that.
That's okay.
We're still moving forward, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hearing this a lot as well, as like, how do you get community buy-in? And I think, right, is if you don't have that, you've got nothing. And really, frankly, when we started this retreat project, which is a pretty straightforward retreat project, we have space to retreat. It's a huge property. It's pretty obvious that we need to maintain access. It's the only access for 4,300 acres. When we started in 2015, it was a little before all those big storms that we've dealt with, right? 2018, 2019, kind of those crazy storms. And it really was politically impossible to move this project forward. I think back in those days, there was a lot of talk about riprap and not retreating, not giving up, right? So I would actually come up with a different word than retreat. I was calling it, reconfiguration in hopes that they would be more palatable. But it really took, there was one group of very politically savvy people to shut down the project. I was told to be patient, which is really hard for me. And from 2015 to when we restarted this project was all those storms. We had some crazy storms, and it was sort of that set the table for us to be able to restart this project. We did a ton of outreach. We did 2 sets of alternative analysis and really vetted those through the public, so that even though we felt like retreat was the best option and the most scientifically appropriate option and the most financially appropriate option, we had to get the community to get there with us. So we kind of went through that process. So I think community outreach and getting the people at the table that are kind of the thorn in your side, like making sure you get those people into the conversation is really important.
That's great.
Anybody?
Anything to add to that? I was going to move into our next question if that's good. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Josh on this one. Hear from you again. What's one thing municipal staff should start doing or stop doing to move resilience work forward?
Well, I'm not sure about what to stop doing, but if staff is not already having conversations with other town leadership about what needs to happen, then I think that's a great place to start. Because, as I said before, a lot of the, the avenues towards progress really rely on having collaborative, cooperative relationships with other folks on the municipal side. And that's just because of the nature of the problem, where it's so multifaceted, and there are so many different considerations to take into account, such as utilities like water, such as wastewater, such as the road itself. These things are not all overseen or governed by a single entity or by a single person. So if you're looking to change or make some fundamental change to water, for instance, then that is going to require having conversations and trying to work with the people who are responsible for that. And I think that the best thing you can do is try to make it as easy a lift as possible for them. A lot of people have, they're dealing with putting out fires on a day-to-day basis, and that's where 90% of their attention may be. And so the long-range planning is, may sometimes fall, behind a little bit on the back burner. But if you can do something to make it as easy a lift as possible, whether it comes to, chasing, grant funding, or whatnot, then that's a huge help.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add to that? Anything we should start or stop doing to move resilience forward?
Again, I don't think there's anything to stop doing, but like I said, in Chatham, we have multiple committees. We have a working waterfront committee. We have the Shellfish Advisory Committee. We have Waterways Committee and South Coastal Harbor Planning Committee. And just bringing all the projects and all the updates to those committees. And then a lot of them are part of the working waterfront, and then they know others in there, and they can discuss it with them and invite them to the meetings as well. So it's just constantly keeping everyone aware of what's going on and educating through that.
I have something real quick to add. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Again, keep it simple. I really think we can't come at them super technical out of the gate, certainly be available to answer the more technical questions. But again, with our outreach, it's trying to capture, all your user groups, not just your committees, of course, but we used our off-road vehicle database, our neighborhood. Oh my goodness, do you have to get the neighborhood involved? And trying to draw in that conversation on that level. Like really, people are like, how is this going to affect me? And you got to kind of think of it when addressing these people, their concerns, and not really try not to make it too technical is really how I feel worked for us. I mean, with the neighborhood can stop you really quickly with an appeal, and so we really went out of our way to get them involved with our outreach.
I think the only thing I would say to stop doing is some advice that I got early on before we began our coastal resilience plan, and that would be to stop admiring the problem. It can be very daunting to think, how am I going to save this town? And when you stop thinking about the magnitude of the risk that we're facing and start thinking about what kind of small incremental things we can do to move forward, I think that would help. And I would just say start persevering. I think my fellow panelists have said, our typically staff in this position, resilience planning is not your only job, and there are hundreds of distractions, but to find sort of those little steps you can take in a day to move forward on that long-range planning and keeping focused on that has helped me.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great. That's a great point to leave us on, and now transition into audience questions. So let's keep it to the question only, so we have time for multiple. We got a question here. Yep, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm with AmeriCorps Cape Cod and the Town of Harwich Conservation. And I'm just curious about, with Cape Cod being so seasonal, is it difficult? Does that make community outreach more difficult since so many people are gone for so much of the year? Because I just moved here in October and I live in Wellfleet, so I know how seasonal these towns can be. So I'm just curious about how you guys handle that.
I can answer that. Yeah, that's a really important question. Obviously, we tried to do everything with an opportunity for remote participation, but it is, again, one person strategically placed can stop these projects, and you got to kind of think of it that way. So you don't want a neighbor to come back in June and not be informed. So that is a really important aspect.
I would say one thing, we have a very engaged part-time resident taxpayers association who we engaged from the beginning. We had great participation. All of our meetings and presentations to them were by Zoom, but there were generally 20 to 30 people at those meetings. So it was the word was getting out. People were looking to protect their properties. In other instances, we will actually postcard folks to their home address to let them know about upcoming meetings. So that has helped too. It does add a significant cost, but that kind of outreach, I think, does go a long way.
Question here? Oh, sorry, we had the microphone first.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Just quickly, have the tribes been consulted about this problem? They have a lot of experience with knowing about migration and wintering and summering and how to minimize impact on the land.
I didn't catch the question, I'm sorry.
The question's about engaging the tribe.
Yeah, I think as resilience initiatives move forward, engaging all user groups and forgive me, I didn't get all of your questions. So if I move off course, then feel free to speak again. But
sorry, I can repeat it. So I'm Steve Uso from the Cape Cod Museum of Natural History, and just wondering whether you had consulted the tribes about how they would handle, whether it's migration, whether it's minimizing impact, whether it's minimizing the impact of the land on them.
Yeah. We have not consulted yet, but that's a great idea. And one thing that I was really interested in yesterday, hearing the panel talk, about indigenous perspectives on the Cape here is how the sense of history is so much greater than what our sense of history, sort of in a Western way, is. And I went back a little bit in time, to 1938. But when you think about, the context of what the panel yesterday said, that's a drop in the bucket. When they're talking about traditional collective inherited knowledge, that goes back thousands of years. And I think it would be very beneficial to have that conversation, to sort of gain those perspectives, for specific processes like Surf Drive and other resilience projects that are taking place. So I can only see that moving it in a good direction.
Can we do this quick one and then we'll get everyone to break?
Okay, hi, I'm Ron Bergstrom, I'm Barnstable County Commissioner. We have a dredge and we do nourishment, beach nourishment, try to do that. I was also here in '86 in Chatham when the beach broke through, and I've seen what happens when people's properties are threatened. And my question is, have you done an assessment of how long you can hold the ocean back? In other words, how long in these, like in Sandy Neck and in Eastham and other places, do you feel you could do that indefinitely, or is there a time frame where eventually the ocean is going to take its toll, as it has with houses falling in Sandy Neck and Eastham and so on? So I mean, my question is, do we bow to the inevitable, or do we do everything we can to keep the ocean back?
I guess I'll answer that. I do think there's a lot of studies going on how long we can kind of hold it back, or when do we have to start retreating, which I believe is the next one in here.
Session, yeah.
And I think we do have to start looking at retreating where we can. And I know that in Chatham we've done a salt marsh study and the retreat of the salt marsh, but that also goes into where they've looked at where areas are where we can move back. And it's just looking into that, where there are available areas to move back, and then where we can retreat in some areas. I think it's difficult because of the private ownership and people don't want to move their homes. But when we look at the town, we have to look at where the waterfront properties are and where we can retreat on those properties, and we are looking at that.
Go ahead. Quick.
I would say I don't have much. Our coastal resilience plan went to 2070, but it is something that I personally have considered. What will the next generation do? I think all we can do is recommend what we can for the next time horizon. But I can't say we've really looked beyond 2070. I think all we can do is sort of the incremental approach that our plan proposes for the next 50 years.
Please join me in thanking our panelists.